on, guys? Justin Fuller, ex-Honda salesman, tech lover, and your host today. We are going to be talking about the 2024 Honda CR-V Sport Hybrid. If you're wondering how is this different from a 2023, and then how does it stack up against other hybrids, we're going to go over that and more. So let's hop on in. So before we really dive into this car and start talking about all these different dimensions and horsepowers and miles per gallon and all these different things, I want to go over some basics with you real quick. And that's understanding, hey, what trim levels are they? How does this work? How does Honda do this, right? So I want to show you. The base model of this vehicle is an LX model, right? Non-hybrid. When you jump up one trim level, that is the EX, also non-hybrid. Then you come to the Sport Hybrid. That is what we're sitting in right now, and that is the first available hybrid that you can get. Now, above that is an EXL, which is also not a hybrid. So this uniquely lives in between two non-hybrid vehicles. Now above the EXL, you're going to find the Sport L Hybrid. That is new for 2024. So just something to keep in mind if you're shopping pre-owned, you're not going to find that in a 2023. And then above that is going to be your Sport Touring Hybrid, right? So that's all the bells, all the whistles, right? So just understand trim level wise what your options are. So you're looking at a 2-liter engine that is putting out 204 horsepower. Now the way this is working is it has two motors connected to this 2-liter engine, and that's what's allowing it to produce that 204 horsepower. Now, if you were to drop down into a non-hybrid version, you'd be looking at 190 horsepower. So just something to keep in mind if you're looking at hybrid versus non-hybrid, there are going to be some roles and some parts that are going to be different. So I want to talk to you about a horsepower comparison. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does the 2-liter engine putting out 204 horsepower compare with other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I will remind you, it doesn't matter if you're in a 2023 hybrid or a 2024. All right, guys, so I want to talk to you about a 0 to 60 time on this vehicle. So the 2024 CR-V Hybrid is getting 7.6 seconds to get from 0 to 60 miles per hour. Now, if you were jumping to a non-hybrid version, let's say the EXL model, you'd be at 8.3 seconds. So not dramatically different, but there is a difference there. Now, if you're thinking, hey, if I go to the 2023, is there going to be any difference? Absolutely not. It's still going to be that 7.6 for the hybrid and the 8.3 for the non-hybrid. But while we're here, I'm going to throw comparisons to see how does 0 to 60 time on this vehicle stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. Let's talk about gas mileage for the Honda CR-V. This car gets 43 in the city and 36 on the highway. That's pretty kick-ass. Now, if you're looking at a non-hybrid version of this vehicle, you'd be looking at 28 in the city and I believe 34 on the highway. But keep in mind, depending on the trim level of the vehicle you pick, you may be in a 2-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive model, and it may affect the gas mileage, depending on weight and things like that. So just something to be aware of. Not every trim level has the exact same gas mileage, but I can tell you one thing, the hybrid has considerably better gas mileage than the non-hybrid vehicle. But before we jump to the next topic, I want to throw a comparison up so you can understand how does the gas mileage in this car stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen. While that is up on the screen, I'll remind you, if you were looking at a 2023 model, you would be safe. You're safe to get one. It's the exact same gas mileage if you're in the non-hybrid or in the hybrid. The big difference is I'm going to tell you is that if you're looking at a 23, you might be able to save yourself a couple bucks. So just something to keep in mind, whether it's brand new because they were $1,000 different starting prices, or if it's pre-owned, maybe just save some money because it's pre-owned. So if you're shopping SUVs, particularly the CR-V and any of its competition, probably cargo space is going to be important to you. So let's talk about that. I'm going to pull you on in here. So from here to here, you have 39.3 cubic feet of cargo space. Now, while we're back here, I want to point out a couple things. One, the car comes with carpeted floor mats, so something to be aware of. I do have tie downs in case you've got little ones you need to put in car seats. Back here, I do have a 12-volt outlet. Now, you're going to find that this car does not have a spare where you would typically find one on the standard CR-V. Instead, this is where your battery's going to live, and some additional space back here. But you do have a tire repair kit, which is going to live right in here. So I can pop this open, get to that. And while we're back here, I want to talk about this little guy. Now, if you're thinking, Justin, that's a mighty odd kazoo you have, and why would you be talking about it in a Honda video? That's because it's not a kazoo. What this is for is if you run out of gas. So I'm going to flip you on around here. So this now has a valve on it, right? It's no longer a cap. So if I ran out of gas and I don't have a gas cap, I need a way to be able to hold that open. That's where this guy comes into play. I can then hold this open and pour gas into it on the event that I don't have a gas can that would be able to do that for me. Now I'm gonna put that away, but I wanna point out one other thing. When you're back here where that funnel is, you'll see this little yellow wire back here. So you can see that little guy right there. If you ever were not to be able to get this open, if you pull that little wire, it'll pop this open. Now, this is connected to your door lock, so one thing to keep in mind, but if you live in those cold climate places where this can sometimes freeze, that little wire back there can become an ice spray. Before I leave the back end, I just wanna remind you that this is not a powered tailgate. depending on the trim level of this vehicle that you pick, you are gonna get or not get a power tailgate. So I'll throw something up so you can understand by trim level which comes with a power tailgate and which does not. I want to quickly do a comparison so you can understand how does the 39.3 cubic feet from the seats back compete with other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up on the screen, I'll remind you, if you were looking at a 2023 model, it is not going to make a difference. They are the exact same when it comes to those dimensions. You're going to see a theme here, and that's the 23 and 24 are very similar. Now, when you flip the seats all the way down, you've got 76.5 cubic feet of storage in the back of this vehicle. It's actually a pretty decent amount. If you went camping and wanted to sleep in the back of your car, you could probably fit a twin, maybe a full air mattress back here and be able to sleep in it. The only thing that I don't care for is in the last couple of years, they've changed this. This used to be super flat, and now it's got this bump. I have a feeling it may have to do with the hybrid and how they have to structure things higher, but it's just kind of a bummer. You'd probably have to build something or just put something under this if you did want to make this completely flat. So something to keep in mind. Now, while we're back here, I do want to throw up a comparison so you can see how the 76.5 cubic feet of space in this vehicle stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. So I'm going to throw that up. While that's up, I'll remind you, once again, if you're in a 2023 model, it is not going to make a difference. It is the exact same dimensions in the 23 versus the 24. So if you're shopping pre-owned, keep that in mind. You might be able to save a couple bucks and get something with comparable space. All right, guys, so I want to stop to talk to you about something I find really important. When I sold Hondas, I regularly ran into people who just could not figure this part out. And it's because a lot of manufacturers don't make it that simple. And that's understanding what trim levels have and kind of if I jump down or jump up, how does that change things? So as far as trim levels go, we are in the Sport Hybrid. So there's an LX, there's an EX, both non-hybrids, the Sport Hybrid, an EXL, which is non-hybrid, and then you've got the Sport L, which is new this year, right? So you don't have that in the 23, and then you're touring, right? So you've got 6 different trim levels of the vehicle, but I want to walk you through a couple things. One, if I drop down to that EX, right? So the next model below it, one, how much money is that going to save me? But two, what items am I going to give up, right? Now, we understand it's not a hybrid, so you're going to lose out on some miles per gallon, but I want you to see those other items in the vehicle that you're going to lose out on as well. So after you've taken a look at that, let's talk about 2 other things. One, if I go from this Sport Hybrid and want to jump up 1 trim level, that would be to an EXL, which is also not a hybrid. It's a unique situation you're in. But if I do that, 1, how much extra money is going to cost me? But 2, what extra amenities am I going to get by doing so? But understand if you do that, you're still going to lose out on that gas mileage. Now, the third comparison I want to do is probably going to make a little bit more sense for people that are shopping hybrids. And that's if I go from this Sport Hybrid, right? I skip the EXL and jump up to the next available hybrid, the Sport L, right? The new trim level that they've added for 2024. 1, how much extra money is that going to cost me? And then 2, what is the list of items that it's going to get me by spending that extra money? After you take a look at that, let's hop back in. All right, guys, so here we are in the second row of this vehicle, and it's surprisingly spacious. I pushed this seat all the way back as if I was driving. I'm 6 foot 250, so I'm not incredibly tall, but I'm a bigger guy, and I can easily fit by myself, and I still have some leg space, right? Now, back here, there's a couple things I want to point out. One, they did make this change a couple years ago, and that you have a lot more reclining availability to you now. So you can see I have the seat drop way back while I have this one up. So that is a change that you're going to see that I really like. Now, when you get into the Sport Hybrid, you are going to see that the stitching is a little bit different than the other trim levels, and that's one, you've got black with a gray finish here, and then it's stitched in orange. So a little bit of that sport feel is, I think, what they're going to. Now, this is a cloth interior. If you were looking for a leather interior, you're going to need to go up models, right? So you're going to go up trims. So I'm going to throw something on the screen so you can understand, hey, if I'm looking for leather, what trims do I need to jump to get that? Now, I'll remind you, there are third-party aftermarket companies that can install leather for you for roughly probably $2,500 to $3,000 with labor. So understand, if you wanted to get a base model and have something installed, you absolutely could. But if you're looking for factory, you're going to have to be in certain trim levels to get that. Now, as far as amenities go in the back of this car, there's just a couple things I want to point out in the center stack, and that's one, you do have air vents. Kind of nice to know. Sometimes when you get into smaller vehicles like this, that's not always an option. And then 2, you have 2 USB-C chargers here, and then up front, you're going to have an additional USB, USB-C, and also a 12-volt power outlet, along with a reminder, you do have that power outlet in the back too. So a lot of places to charge devices if you need it. So here we are in the front row of this vehicle, and there's a couple things that I want to talk to you about. That's first going to be is that obviously cloth interior. We already know that, but I want to talk to you about leg space. This has got 41.3 inches of leg space in it. I can comfortably fit in this. If you can fit in the back with the less leg space, you're going to be absolutely fine up here. And if you need to do a little man spreading, you'll be just fine here. This actually is pretty narrow when it comes to that. Now, up here, there's a couple things that I want to point out. One, this is a manual seat, right? So classic adjustment right there. You do have a powered seat on that side. Depending on the trim level that you pick is going to depend on whether you get powered on one side or both sides. So I'm going to throw something up on the screen so you can understand how does that stack up. Now, after you're taking a look at that, let's do a comparison. I want you to understand how the 41.3 inches of leg space stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll remind you, if you're looking at the 2023 model, once again, this is going to be the exact same dimensions, not going to play a role. Now, with tech becoming ever important in vehicles, there are a couple things that I want to talk about and make sure you understand when it comes to the trim levels, and that's touchscreen size and correlating audio system. Now this CR-V comes with a 7-inch touchscreen. Now that is coordinated with a 240-watt 6-speaker system. But I want you to understand that depending on the trim level of the vehicle you pick, it will affect whether you have a 7-inch or 9-inch touchscreen, or, maybe you have 240 watts or 320 watts or a Bose 12 speaker system. So I'm gonna throw something up on the screen so you can understand, hey, depending on the trim of the car, what am I getting when it comes to audio? So let's talk about the steering wheel and a couple functions, and then I wanna go over some safety features. So on the right side over here, I've got my home button. This is gonna then allow you to scroll and jump between all these different menus. I'm not gonna go through all of these. I think for the most part, you can kind of get the general gist of what some of this stuff is, but I just want you to know that it's there, right? Now, as far as affecting volume, you can control right here, source, jump between FM, AM, USB, Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, whatever you got going, and then jump in between tracks right there. Now, voice command, I can press and tap this for Hondas, or I can press and hold if I have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto hooked up to then jump to Siri or Google, right? So kind of cool that you can do that. Now, on the other side, this is where we're gonna get to some of those additional safety features, right? So the first one is lane keep assist. So if I turn this on, you're gonna see that same indicator come on up here. Now, what it's doing is it's using a camera to detect the lines out on the road. So if I start to drift to the left or the right, it'll actually correct for me and keep me centered on my road so I don't accidentally, bump into the car next to me because I turned around and got distracted by my kids, my dog, my coffee spill, whatever the case may be. So that's lane keep assist. Now, the secondary feature I want to talk to you about is going to be adaptive cruise control. So when I get up to the speed I want to set, I would press the set button, right? And you'll see that indicator come on up here. Now, once I've done that, I can press this button down here. Now, when you do that, you're going to see boxes appear up in the dash. The more boxes, the more space it's going to keep between you and the car in front of you. Now, if that car up there happens to slow down to 55, it will keep that designated space in between you. So it'll slow the car down, and then when I get out from behind them, it'll then take me back up to the speed that I set. Now, there are a few other safety features that I want to quickly discuss with you, just so you understand what they are and what the car comes with, right? So if I scroll down one here, the first is road departure mitigation. So much like lane keep assist, if I'm driving down the road and I start to drive off the shoulder of the road, the car can actually give me an audible alert and vibrate the wheel to let me know, hey, you are getting drowsy and driving off the side of the road. Pay attention, right? The next one down is going to be my blind spot information system. I think we're all pretty familiar with how blind spot works, but I will point it out real quick. If I have somebody in my blind spot, the indicator in the mirror right here will actually light up, right? If I then still decide that I want to get over, it'll give me an audible alert to let me know, hey, there is somebody there, don't get over. Now, the last feature I'm going to point out is going to be collision mitigation braking. So this is much like adaptive cruise control. It is using radar down in the grille to detect cars in front of me. So if it's looking like I'm going to rear in another car, it can give me an audible alert, it can then flash in the dash and then actually prevent the accident by applying the brakes to the car. All right, guys, so let's talk about the touchscreen real quick in this vehicle. So when it comes to just using the standard touchscreen and not really applying Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I'm going to be real honest, they didn't do a lot to really make this appealing. If I'm jumping over to phone, I can get there. It's very gradient, right? Grays and blacks. Jumping into radio, same thing. Not a whole lot to look at here. Media-wise, they're really kind of counting on, Bluetooth. At least it's pulling in some imagery, or I can jump into Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, right? So I'm going to touch on that for just a minute. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto setup is not wireless. They have done a wired setup in this car, which to me is obnoxious. Make them all wireless, but, nonetheless, this is what we're working with. Now on here, you'll see that of course I have different things like media options and then my maps over here to the right. You can flip flop these and I've got some different shortcuts. Now what it does is it provides apps that are integrated in to be able to show and be usable on the screen, but it's gonna affect them, right? Some of them are gonna have all of the options and capabilities that you might be used to, but it's still nice to have. So if you wanna play with some of the different options, just quickly, I'll show you a couple quick trips. And that's one, if I come all the way down here to the bottom, the first is, hey, if I wanna mess with the wallpaper, great. I can change the wallpaper and customize this. Maybe I'm a big fan of blue, cool. I want the blue wallpaper back there, right? So now when I jump back in, I've got the blue wallpaper. Kind of cool that you can do that. Now, the next thing I want to do is from that very first screen that you saw. So I'm going to go to change layout. When I get to layout, I'm going to move the navigation closer to me. So when I pop this open, now you'll notice it's flipped from what we looked at earlier. Now the navigation is going to be closest to me, and then my other media options are going to be over here to the right side. So just some easy things that you can do. Lastly, one other quick thing I'll show you. You can add in shortcuts, right? If there's somebody you call a lot, you can set up a shortcut to immediately call them. Or if you have places that you go to regularly, right? For this example, I picked gas station, the nearest gas station, and a Starbucks. So all I've got to do is tap it. It'll then fill in the prompt for me and then direct me to the nearest gas station. Now, you may be saying, hey, Apple CarPlay is pretty cool. Android Auto is pretty cool, but there's some apps that I want to use that I don't necessarily, have the ability to, right? Maybe I want to be able to watch Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus. Well, you don't always have that option available to you to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but I do have something that'll help. This is a CPC 200T box. I'll throw their information up on the screen so you can understand where this comes from, and I'll talk about the price here in just a second, but I want to show you what it does. If I pull up the touchscreen, you'll suddenly notice it looks similar, but different, right? Not quite Apple CarPlay, but very similar. But what you're going to find is that when I jump into the apps available, I'm going to have some different apps in here that you can't necessarily get to. Or hey, if I want to download an app, I can go to the Play Store and download anything I want. Or if I want to jump into Netflix, I can absolutely jump in there and start watching a show that I want. I get a lot of questions related to, hey, I've tried other boxes like this and I've run into lag. Is that the case with this one? No, it's not. I've found that I've used it in probably 5 or 6 different cars at this point, and it works pretty well. Now, how is it getting data? It's getting data from my phone. I'm using my phone as a hotspot. So all I'm simply doing is going to my settings and turning my hotspot on. From there, I'm allowing it to connect up. Now, once it's connect up, that's what allows me to have access to these apps, right? So some of these different apps. Now, the second part of this that I really like is if I jump into an app like Spotify. Spotify is available to you on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but the difference is that when you're using their version, it limits what you can do. So here, I could jump into an artist, right? And it'll give me everything related to the artist. Their popular songs, their discography, radio stations that sound like them, all that. Or if I want to run a search, I can type in a search, or I can use voice command. If you've ever used Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in a car, it uses the voice command. So you might try to say an artist 5 or 6 times, and it just ain't getting it. And that can be a big pain when I might have somebody sitting right next to me who could type it in for me. So knowing that you can do that. So what it does is open up a lot of the apps and give you the full potential, as if you were using them on your tablet or your laptop or whatever the case may be. And then additionally, it gives you the ability to use those other apps, right? If you want to play with Netflix, if you want to use YouTube TV, or whatever the case may be, Teams, or you want to go download something, you absolutely can. So it's just really nice that it gives you the ability to do those things. Now, one other cool thing that I'll show you, and I'll just let you know that I have made an entire video reviewing this, but I can do cool stuff like, hey, let me pull up this, and then once I have this pulled up, I want to split the screen. Maybe I want to pull up something else and split the screen with it. I absolutely can. So maybe I want to go, cool, man, I want to have that running with my YouTube channel so I can be able to, do whatever, right? So understand you can't do this with every single app. There is some issues related to that, but it's really cool that it allows me this ability. If you want to learn more about this, I've made an entire review on it. I'll throw it up in the corner and in the description so you can check it out, but just something to keep in mind. Now, the question you may be having about that is, how much does this guy cost? This is $155 if you buy from their website. Now, I happen to be an affiliate. They send it out to me because I do a lot of reviews on cars and products related, so I can get this down to $127.10 with my coupon code, which happens to be my name. So if it's something you're interested in the description, I will throw a link to get to it and then my coupon code so that you can access it if this is something you're interested in buying. I've tested in a lot of cars. I've tested probably a handful of these, and I find that this one's pretty cool, and it's very affordable in comparison to other ones that I ran into that were $300 and $400. All right, guys, so if you missed any of the comparisons in the video, I'm going to visit all of those again so that we can go back to them quickly. And if you didn't, well, then let's just revisit them anyway. So, starting at the front of the car, this has a 2-liter engine putting out 204 horsepower. I want you to understand that whether you're looking at this or non-hybrid, you may be looking at a 1.5-liter or a 2-liter engine, right? And the difference is going to be 190 horsepower versus 204 horsepower. But I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can understand how does the 204 horsepower in this specific CR-V stack up to other makes and models out in the world. I'll remind you, if you're in a 2023 model, makes absolutely no difference. They're the same when it comes to engine, transmission, suspension, all that. Let's talk about miles per gallon and the Honda CR-V. So the Honda CR-V Hybrid gets 43 in the city and 36 on the highway. That is pretty good gas mileage. If you're looking at a non-hybrid, you'd be looking at 28 in the city and 34 on the highway. So just something to keep in mind. I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can understand how does the gas mileage in this vehicle stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you 2 things. One, if you're in a 2023, doesn't make much of a difference, but I will remind you that if you're in certain trim levels and if you're looking at 2-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive, that is going to affect the gas mileage. So something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about front row leg space. You've got 41.3 inches of leg space in the front of this vehicle. It is quite a bit. I can spread my legs, I can do all the things, and I am doing just fine. I'm going to throw a comparison up so you can see how does this car stack up with that 41.3 inches of leg space against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll remind you, if you're looking at a 2023 model when it comes to leg space, it is the exact same. There is no difference. It hasn't changed over quite a few years. So you would be good to go. Now, when you jump into the second row of this vehicle, you've got 41 inches of leg space behind me. So even with the seats pushed back you saw earlier, I had quite a bit of space still that I could work with. I was very comfortable and it reclines quite a bit. Now, I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how does this vehicle stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll remind you, if you are looking at a 2023 model, it has 40.4 inches of leg space. You're losing out on 0.6 inches of leg space if you go from 23 to 24, right? Now, when you jump into the very back of this vehicle and start talking about cargo space, if you have the seats flipped up, you've got 39.3 cubic feet of storage space in the back. So it's cool if you're using like, hey, I actually need to throw a couple bags in there, or maybe I need to, throw my dogs back there because I'm going on something like that. When you flip those down though, then you have 76.5 cubic feet of storage space in the back. And this is where it can come into play if you're like, hey man, I got to load up a drum kit, or I like to go camping, and sometimes I need to add, camping supplies or sleep in my car, you'd absolutely be good. But I want to do two comparisons. One, with the 39.3 cubic feet that you have with the seats folded up, how does that stack up against other makes and models out there in the world? So I'm gonna throw that up on the screen and then remind you, if you're looking at a 2023, identical, doesn't make a difference. Now, after that, when you flip those seats down and you're at that 76.5 cubic feet, how does that stack against other makes and models out there in the world? I'll throw that up on the screen. 23, the exact same, makes no difference. But there is that big hump now where if you drop back a couple of years, you wouldn't get that. It'd be a little bit more flat. So if that's important to you, just something to keep in mind if you're shopping pre-owned, maybe you want to look back a couple of years and find one that's a little bit flatter. If not, you can make it work depending on what your needs are. So let's talk about 0 to 60 times on the 2024 Honda CR-V. So in this car, you're getting from 0 to 60, that's right, throw your head back in 7.6 seconds, right? Now, if you're looking at a non-hybrid version of the vehicle, you're only gonna get 8.3 seconds, so, slow way down. I know, it's not a drag race here, but I just want you to understand. But I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does this vehicle stack up to other makes and models out there in the world, right? While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2023, it's not going to make a difference. They're going to be the exact same, so you'd be safe to shop either one. Now, final thoughts on this vehicle, I just want to present a couple things to you. If you're looking at a 2023's MSRP versus a 2024 MSRP, they're about $1,000 difference. The 24 is $1,000 more expensive, and for what, I really couldn't tell you because most of the things we talked about are the exact same, but understand that. But if you are looking at a 2024 versus 23, understand that Sport L trim hybrid is going to live only in the 24. So if that's something that's important to you and you end up shopping that one, know that it's not going to be available to you in the 2023. Outside of that though, if I was looking at this car, it's a great car, right? My mom drives one of these, to give you an example, right? It's not super tall, it's not super low. You can slide in and out of the car very well, right? It gets good gas mileage. This one gets great gas mileage being a hybrid. It's got a lot of safety features that just come standard in the vehicle. So as an all-around vehicle, it's a little bit vanilla. It's not going to stand out in a crowd, but it's going to get everything done that you could ever need, right? So it makes sense for a lot of people. Last thing, I just want to ask for a couple favors. One, I hope you press the like button because you like the way I present the content and you enjoyed what I'm doing. Two, I hope you leave a comment. If you don't like it or you do like it, I hope you leave a comment. Or if you have a question, there's a lot of people in here that all have questions and I try to answer as many as I can, but you'll find that other people will help answer those questions as well. Third, I hope you subscribe to the channel so when I make videos like this, you will absolutely get them. You can learn about tips and tricks on videos or products that I've come across, much like the CPC 200 T-Box, right? Ooh, product drop. And then lastly, I hope that you'll share the video. If you got some friends who are shopping for a CR-V, or maybe they own one and just want to learn a little bit more about it, I find that some of these videos that I offer are pretty good content. So I hope you'll like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Later, guys!